You know, whenever I talk about music on here, I promise myself that the next time I do, it'll finally be about metalcore, which, if you couldn't tell by all of the t-shirts and basically half of my Twitter feed that nobody sees, go follow me on Twitter, by the way. That's an order. Basically, yeah, and metalcore is my favorite music genre, and I want to ramble on about it. So I'm gonna finally be doing that today. We're gonna be doing like a little top 10 list of my favorite kind of underrated artists in that genre. Yeah, we're doing lists on the channel now, I guess. I suppose that's something that we're doing. So first things first, what defines underrated? It's kind of a subjective thing, but at least in my eyes, or I guess I'm defining it here, as any artist under like 300,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. Is that a super specific parameter that I just completely made up? Maybe. Possibly. But to me that kind of feels like a good cutoff point where most more than casual metalcore listeners will probably have at least heard of an artist. Besides, most of these bands are at like 100,000 and under, with a couple exceptions, so it was mostly just an excuse to give myself a little bit of breathing room. Also, if some of these bands aren't strictly metalcore, understand that I'm genre blind, so just pretend the title says metalcore / alternative metal. Dork. Sorry. Okay, before we get started, I have a fair few honorable mentions, starting off with Holding Absence, who definitely don't qualify for this, given that they're hovering at like just around 1 million monthly listeners, but god damn it, that's not enough for me. This band means the absolute world to me, and I think that every radio station ever should be playing them. And when they're not, people should be asking, where's Holding Absence? Moving along, I now present a short list of acts that didn't quite make the cut, and I couldn't find a place to talk about them, but I do still highly recommend checking them out. So, Outloved, Execution Day, Throat Cut, From Joy, Heaving, Lost in Hollywood, Icy Red, Midwinter, and Snooze, but specifically their 2025 album, I Know How You Will Die. Alright, now that I've immediately overwhelmed you with mentioning a ton of extra bands, let's start the actual list. Number 10 is Red Keep, and the fact that these guys only have like 16,000 monthly listeners is a goddamn shame. I have to say that I do prefer their older work to their recently released EP Synchronicities. The newer project is still pretty damn solid, and I absolutely love King of Chaos off of it. The guitar work on their 2024 album, Ruminate, it just really hits the spot for me, really scratches that itch in my brain, especially off of the closing track, Hakai. Overall, I'd highly recommend both that album and their debut EP, Prismatic. And while again, I do like the new release, I love the sound that they had early on into the band's life, and I would really like to see them return to that in the future, but overall, really good stuff. Number 9 is Better Lovers. The sample size of this band is a little small, given that they've only released an EP and an album up to this point. Not that sample size is the problem, we'll touch a little more on that later. But everything I've heard from them has been absolutely incredible. I personally prefer the EP God Made Me an Animal to the album, but both projects are really, really good, and I'm a fan of the all-around sound that the vocals and some incredible guitar riffs tie together to make. On the point of the vocals, I'd be remiss not to mention that lead vocalist Greg Puciato departed the band, which really is a shame, because his vocal work is incredible. There's just an angst in these vocals that I love and I find so hard to find in this specific way. I mean, if you listen to it, you'll hear what I'm talking about. Nonetheless, though, Better Lovers is still releasing their second LP eventually. No date has been given, it's just been confirmed that they are working on it. And despite Puciato's exit, I'm still pretty optimistic about what the band will be able to produce with a new direction. And number 8 is Levels, who just released their second album, This Will Make You Feel Again, earlier in this year, and as someone who really likes that sound of kind of industrial metal fused with like kind of electronic elements, this album had me hooked when it first came out. Going back and listening to their full discography, it's really cool to see how they've kind of played around with the production and experimented with that, with their newer stuff especially. This Will Make You Feel Again is truthfully one of my favorite albums of the year up to this point. Obviously, we'll see where it stands at the end of the year, but I don't even think it's their best work. That would go to, personally, their 2024 EP Pulse, of which both the title track and Breed are my favorite listens. Breed is so good, man. I'm not going to pretend that they're doing something like revolutionary with their sound, but I really don't see the problem, and never have seen the problem with that, as long as what they're doing is good, and Levels, to me, is really, really good. Number 7 is Accuse, which is another band that isn't exactly reinventing the wheel, but to me that really doesn't matter whatsoever. They do what they do damn well, and I'm always a big fan of bands within the metalcore genre that aren't afraid of doing big anthemic choruses, especially when they have the vocalist for it. And I think that What Will Never Be off of their 2023 EP House of Doubt is probably the best example of what I mean. Their 2025 album Dealers of Doom follows suit, and I think that they found their sound in like a really, really good way. Obviously that's not to say that I wouldn't like to see them experiment a little. What the fuck is happening with my vein right now? That's weird. Anyways, but the very like heavy, powerful song tied together with like a clean chorus. It's a tried and true format, but I really think that they excel at it. There's nothing wrong with that. Vein is popping out of my arm. It's distracting me. I can't talk properly anymore. At number 6 is I Promise the World, the first of a few bands on this list that I've actually gotten the privilege to see live. And they really do put on a hell of a show. I'm super excited to see them again in November with Static Dress. That's besides the point, but I Promise the World is a damn good act that does a really good job blending that metalcore sound with some kind of like 2000s emo elements that I really enjoy. The influence isn't as heavy, but they kind of remind me of Static Dress a little bit in that regard. I'm a sucker for good lyricism, and that this band has that in spades, and they're another act that I do equally enjoy, the screamo and clean vocals. The production is a lot better on their recent self-titled EP than it is on their album Fear of the Fall, which I don't necessarily think the worst production and mixing hurts that album that much. They're one of those bands where the vocals being kind of drowned out by the instrumental kind of enhances it. If anything, it really helps the whole vibe that they've got going on. But overall, really good band. I love I Promise the World. Next up at number 5 is Cold State. Other than a handful of singles, they have a trifecta of short EPs, all of which I absolutely love. Facelift, off of their 2025 project, The Heinous, is probably my favorite of their work. It's a song I will gladly have on repeat. If you've heard any of these bands up until now, you're probably noticing a trend that I like bands that have catchy and more melodic sort of choruses, and the clean vocals in so many of the Cold State songs are absolutely fantastic. I'm definitely looking forward to whatever the band does next, which I'm kind of hoping is a full-length album. I would love if they go really all in on the sound that they've captured during their 2 most recent EPs. Number 4 is Not Enough Space. Remember earlier when I clarified that my parameter for the bands on this list were that they had to have under 300,000 monthly listeners? Well, this is why. Not Enough Space are currently sitting at just under 250,000, but I really wanted to include them here. I felt it would be unfair if I didn't. Their debut EP, End This Way, is actually my favorite of their work, but their sole album, Weaponizer Rage, is really good as well. There's a lot of songs on there that are consistently on repeat for me. Both vocalists for Not Enough Space absolutely kill it on every song. They give their all. And those like banshee screams are just, they're immaculate. Good lord. Also, they do absolutely shred live, so if you get the chance to, 100% go see them. They put on a hell of a show. Number 3 is Showing Teeth, and to be completely transparent, if she had a full discography to point to, there's a very good chance that she would be number 1 on this list. However, as it stands, Showing Teeth has a whopping 3 songs in the catalog, albeit that's with an album releasing on September 4th. Or is it an EP? I'm really not sure. It's being advertised as an EP, but Spotify says it's an album. I don't know. That's besides the point. Showing Teeth has genuinely one of the most incredible vocal ranges of any artist I've ever heard, regardless of genre. Like, I genuinely am not sure if I can properly describe it in a way that does her justice. The way that she's able to kind of transition from this gritty, almost deathcore adjacent, maybe not quite there, but in that same ballpark style of scream, to some of the most beautiful melodic vocals I've ever heard. It's really nothing short of phenomenal. One of the greatest metalcore vocalists I've ever heard. Needless to say, I'm very excited for the album or EP or whatever it is. I think it's an EP. I'm fairly sure it's an EP, but I'm excited for it to drop. At number 2 is Split Chain, who I honestly hadn't realized were approaching that 300,000 threshold I talked about, and I'm honestly super happy about it. Their entire small discography is incredibly solid, but I think their 2025 album Motion Blur is where they really found themselves and found their sound, and I'd be very happy to see them stick to that. There's a grungy kind of undertone to Split Chain's sound that is also, it's dreamy in a way, if that makes any sort of sense. I was lucky enough to see them open earlier in the year for The Devil Wears Prada, and they put on a really good show. Bored, Tired, Torn is especially incredible live. Very, very fun experience. It doesn't really surprise me that Split Chain has kind of grown in popularity so quickly. I do not remember them having that much traction when I hopped on them. Not that I'm full hipster mode. I listened to them before they were big. But they really do bottle a specific sound that you don't hear from a lot of modern alternative bands. It's very unique. At number 1 is Code Words, and please do forgive me, but I believe I am the biggest Code Words glazer alive. Despite only having 9 songs in their catalog, each and every release has absolutely blown me away. This is one of those bands that I wholeheartedly believe is going to be a staple of the genre in a few years, and I'm going to be on here, bragging that I got to see them open on their first tour. The entire band just feels so remarkably complete for being this early in their existence, and I really like how diverse their limited number of tracks have been. They can do the mainstream kind of upbeat metalcore, they can do smut metal, which I do need to make a video about, because there's so many bands that try this, and they just absolutely suck at it. But there's some heavier elements, there's some really unique production, there's just so much about this band that I love. And not to sound like a broken record, but they're incredible live, and I'm so fortunate to have, like I said, see them open on their first tour as a band. I'm very, very happy about that. Honestly, I was kind of just scratching the surface with this list. Obviously, I had a lot of other bands at the start that I also really do like, and while I didn't talk about them at length, I highly recommend checking them out. But I did also kind of just want an excuse to talk about Code Words and gas them up a little, because I will be there when they release a bigger scale project, and I will be so annoying about it. Now, I'm sure you've been staring behind me at my friend all video, and isn't this so cool? Hold up. It looks dumb with all my hair in the way, but I really don't care. I remember telling myself, next time that I talked about 156 Silence on here, I was gonna beg for these to be sold, because I would buy one in a heartbeat, which I 100% did. That was a pure impulse purchase. After shipping, this thing cost me $80, and I would do it again without even hesitating. But anyways, that's gonna be all from me for now. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you subscribed to the video, leave a subscribe. Let me know what you think of the list. If you have any other semi-niche metalcore bands that you think I should listen to, please go ahead and tell me. I'm always open to recommendations. And also let me know what else you want to see me talk about on the channel. I'm really open to talking about most stuff. And until next time, I'm out of here.